like to welcome everybody to this first workshop of a series of workshops, the Ho'okahua workshops for Lahui Kanaka. We collectively call ourselves the Kumu hula who are presenting this weekend are collectively known as Hua Makahikina. And we are so happy that you guys are all here to join us for what I am entirely excited about. But before we start, as is in many of our traditions today, we're going to start off with a pule. We're going to start off with a maʻi. Mele, of course, created by the late great Edith Kanakaʻole for her ohana and her halau ke kuhi, and has been shared with everyone. Geez, lots of people around the world know this one. So we hope you do too out there. If you can all join in with us, we will start off with a maʻi before we begin today. E ho mai ka ike mai una mai o nā mea huna no e au o nā mele e ho mai ai ho mai ka ike mai luna mai o nā mea una no e au nā mele e ho mai e ho mai e ho mai e ho mai ka ike mai luna mai o nā mea una no e au nā mele e ho mai e ho mai e ho mai. Mahalo nui kākou. Aloha mai, everyone. Again, for joining us all the way. I see our ohana from Maui, from Oahu, from Kauai, from America, all across where our Hawaii are. You guys are joining us today. So thank you guys so much again. Again, this is the first workshop in a series of workshops this weekend presented by Hui Makahikina for Lahui Kanaka, to build a kahua towards Mauliola. And today, the two kumu hula who are going to be featured are kumu hula from Maui, Pueo Pata, and from Oahu, kumu hula Kaʻiulani Odom. Yeah, and I am particularly excited about this, not because I volunteered them to do it and paired them up together to do this, but they offer such great perspective on Mauliola, and not only perspective, but practice too. And I think that's what's going to be really important as we move through this. And notice their beautiful backgrounds on there. Mahalo to Mauliola out there for having created those. I just have to use this time to explain why you can only see my wall in the back of there, but yeah, my computer won't allow me to do a nice fancy Zoom screen. So yeah, so you'll have to put up with interesting story. This wall color is actually in the color wheel at the paint store as Samoan Sunset. Yes, it is. Go look when you go, next time you go to the paint shop. Yeah, so that's our little mea aka for today. But let's get right into it. Lahui Kanaka was something that we started on August 15th. I think I threw out the word, made a call out, a kahea out to Kumu hula to ask, hey, what is it that we can do to help our communities just fight COVID, you know, to flatten the curve, to bring those numbers down. Now, if you all remember, back in August, we had seen numbers just the previous week, ending July and the beginning of August, that the numbers of positive COVID cases skyrocketed from 20, you know, a day towards the beginning of this pandemic, all the way up to 355, you know, in that time span. And so I just had this overwhelming concern that was met with this overwhelming urge to call out to my fellow Kumu hula. A lot of what I understand to be an organizing force in my life, in my own personal life, has come from the halal, has come from the Kumu hula, has come from those leaders who have, you know, stood up at various times throughout our recent history to be able to offer our culture or a response, a cultural response to different issues that have been going on. So I made the call out. Kumu, about 60, you know, 50 or 60 of them responded, and we got on a call that very next day. And as we were discussing what exactly is it that we could do to help this out, the idea or the building that first pohaku of this ahu, of this, you know, of this kahua came, and it was in the context of lahui kanaka. Yeah, so that's our first vocabulary word of the day. Yeah, lahui, we are very ma'a, we're very familiar today with lahui, meaning a group of us, a large group of us, right? Many of us use the word lahui in place of the word nation, for instance, right? Many of us use it in terms of describing a group of people, the lahui Hawaii, for instance, right? And so we're used to talking about lahui in that context. Lahui in the context that we're using it in its most basic form, yeah, and the speakers throughout the weekend will add to this growing understanding of the word lahui. But in its simplest terms, if you look it up in the dictionary, lahui is a law, like a kapu that is placed, you know, on someone. And so it's unusual for the way that we understand it today, right? But hopefully we are able to embrace this as something that we are able to use in this way also, right? So instead of that word kapu, we use lahui, right? And so this is a lahui on us, and the way that we as Kanaka behave and maneuver and understand what's going on around us, and therefore how it is that we maneuver or navigate, I shouldn't say maneuver, but navigate through these next, or not even next, it's happening right now, navigate through these challenging times. Yeah. So when you look up, when you go to vehevehe.com, or you open up your Pukeʻolelo Hawaii, your dictionary, you will be able to see that. Yeah, it's number 3 in the definitions. Yeah, and then Kanaka, of course, you know, all of us as individuals, and Kanaka with the kahako as a peoples, right? The multiplicity of us, the numerous of us people. So lahui Kanaka. Right, we decided to do that, and mahalo to our tita, the great mind of Kaleni Uhiva, who, you know, in talking with her, she shared this idea of a lahui. It is also a pan-Pacific term, right? We find lahui and variations of the word lahui to this meaning, right? To this meaning that couple that you place on stuff throughout, you know, throughout the Pacific, right? We hear different versions of this exact word, shared throughout with that meaning. And one of the examples that we have that is more recent, right, that we can affiliate with is in Aotearoa, when the volcanic eruptions happened there not too long ago, right? I think it was within a year, about a year ago, those volcanic eruptions happened, and people were hurt, and some people passed. They put a arahui on the kai, right? And so we have these living, working definitions of lahui. Yeah. And then we decided, next vocabulary word, that we would be doing this for our Mauliola, right? And again, the speakers will talk a little bit more about the depth and breadth of Mauliola. But Mauliola, again, in its simplest terms, the health and well-being of a Kanaka, of an ohana, of a community, of a lahui, right? Of a group of peoples too. Yeah, so Mauliola in its basic terms, right? So we were going to put this lahui kanaka out there with a focus and with an intention on Mauliola. Yeah, and so that's how this all began, almost 3 anahulu ago. Oh, and we chose anahulu, third vocabulary term. And we chose anahulu, and anahulu is a 10-day period. And that's the way our time segments broke out in, from Kahiko, and people still use those terms and that way of life today. And anahulu is a 10-day period. And we chose that because the anahulus come up in an epic of Hiaka Ikapoli Opele. It comes up in different varying anahulu are used to describe when healing occurs, especially. That's the part that I gravitated to, right? And that when in our conversations we gravitated to. We originally chose 3 anahulu or 30 days because a lot of our medical advice at that time from dear friends and ohana of ours who are MDs, who are out there researching and constantly up on what's happening with COVID-19. They were expressing that 2 incubation periods or the 14-day, 2 of those, and that's you'll hear a lot that we have 2-week time periods, 2 14-day time periods, is good for us to observe lahui, to be able to flatten the curve, to be able to bring down those numbers. Yeah, so that's what happened. Again, almost 3 anahulu ago. We're coming up to the end of this 3 anahulu, coming up on Monday. And yeah, so we wanted to present this, to all of you, with the hopes that the lehu, that the public out there, not only hula people, but everyone who wanted to be a part of something that provides some guidance, some focused intentions on the health and well-being of all of us during these challenging times, that you too will be able to access this content, this methodology, this approach, this way of life. Yeah, and mahalo, Malia has put into the Zoom vocabulary words that we're talking about here. So just check them out in there, and I'm sure she will help me out and put them into the notes or into the comment sections too on the OHA or on the bunch of partners that are joining us today on here. If you can, Malia, mahalo. Yeah, so that's how this all started. Now let's get into what our presenters are going to present on today. And I'd like to introduce them or have them introduce themselves to all of you at this time. Let's start with, Pueo, can we start with you?
Of course. Aloha everybody, my name is Cody Pueo Pata. I'm a Kumu hula here on the island of Maui. We have a small outreach branch on Oahu as well, and I have hula siblings in Japan that I work with a lot too. but it's an honor to be with everybody here today. Mahalo.
Sorry, Kumu hula Kaʻiulani, Odom.
I've known Mihana since she was small, and she still tells me what to do. But aloha, everybody. I am coming from Mokapu, the island of Oahu, and also very happy to be here today.
Mahalo, mahalo. You know, one of the things that we really wanted to, to get across today, and I want you guys to, if you guys can start off here, is can you guys give me some ideas or add to the definition of mauliola? Yeah, for us, if you guys have mana'o on that. And either lahui kanaka too, if you guys want to jump back into that. But for mauliola, I know yesterday we had a webinar series on another, on OHA's platform, on Aloha Rising, that we discussed this, and some great ike came out, on there. So yeah, mauliola.
To me, yesterday they talked about the uli part of mauliola, which is the verdancy or the depth of color that is indicative of health. The depth of blue that's in our oceans, that's indicative of healthy ocean. The depth of green in our forests, that's indicative of healthy forests. And our blood, before it's exposed to oxygen, is also an uli color as well. And so when they talk about I support everything that was said yesterday, but it's the holistic health. It is how our relationship of health, not just within our own body, but within our environment. And in our environment is also our community. And so it's a holistic view of health that I think is different than what the mainstream Western society thinks about.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that and just say that it's really about all of the connections that we have, and that we've become disconnected from a lot of the things that brought us health, whether it's our land or our family or our spirituality or all of these things that really make us vibrant and resilient. And so for a lot of us, we know what it feels like when we're feeling healthy. We wake up every day, we're ready to go, we have energy throughout the day without 5 cups of coffee, we're eating well, we're moving, and we know what that feels like. But if you were to ask people, we did these studies on trying to find out what made people feel healthy. And it wasn't, when we asked them, when was the last time you felt really healthy? It wasn't, oh, my blood sugar was low, or I didn't have high blood pressure, but it was always these stories of connection. I feel connected to my better self. I feel connected to the aina, connected to the community. And so how do we bring ourselves back into feeling those connections on a daily basis that bring us health and bring us vibrancy and bring us resilience?
Right.
Say it with
right.
me now.
Sorry about that.
What Kumu Kaʻiu just said, when we look at the blueness of the ocean, the water itself is not necessarily what's healthy. It's all the things within the water that are working together for that sense of health. And it's the same thing with the greenness of the forest. We're not looking at a monoculture stand of guava. That's not very uli to us. But it's all of these things coming together to create what we perceive as uli, and in ourselves as well, as Kumu Kaʻiu said, it's our health within our community. And the mana'o of pālama is actually us forming delineating our own community in which we can thrive and maintain the sanctity of our mauliola.
You just touched on something that we didn't get to define yet, and I think will be possibly a major part of this ho'ike today. What is a pālama?
So despite what we feel, nobody really is Glinda, the good witch, who can exist in her little bubble and float around in her bubble. And although it's a cute term, bubble, it sounds kind of flimsy from our cultural perspective. And so we have a term, traditional term, that was brought up to my attention by Uncle Al Laganero called pālama. And traditionally and literally, the pālama, it literally means a pā, or a fence, an enclosure made of lama wood. As hula people, lama is the embodiment of our akua, laka, and so this word was very drawing to us. But within the pālama were raised prized people, or people who were so affectionately loved that they were protected. And to get past the pālama, to get past the wall, you had to meet certain criteria. To exist within the pālama, you had to meet certain criteria. So Wakea was raised in pālama. Different chiefs and chiefesses were raised in pālama. And with the advent of Christianity coming here to Hawaii, the figurative form of pālama was more expressed. And they would say things like, "O Yesu ko'u pālama." Jesus is my pālama, is my sanctuary, my haven. When writings were translated from other languages into Hawaiian, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the word pālama is used in there to define a type of friendship in which people find sanctuary, find this haven of friendship and safety. And then it came to mean also like I'm engaged. So I'm keeping myself for so-and-so. That was kind of turned in the late 1800s. The word pālama was extended to that as well. And then we have like the song Pueo, recently recorded by my friends. And in there it says, "Ke ia ene no wau, o ka oe o ka pālama, mālama ia ko kino." That's the phrase from in the song, late 1800s. It says, "I am saying to you, the best type of pālama is for you to take care of your body." And so we've been able to take this very traditional and literal term of a pālama and apply it now to the social distancing bubble that we've started to create now. But as hula people, this lahui kanaka, we're coming at it from a hula vantage, a hula point, a standpoint that we as halau have been able to do over this past malama, this past month. But we've now adapted it to be palatable, to be acceptable, to be accessible to the lehu, to the public. And that's basically what this Ho'okahua series is about. And that's why the name of this talk is Kukulu Pālama, building or constructing your pālama.
Mahalo for that. Okay, so did all of you guys out there hear that? When I first heard Pueo talk about this a few weeks ago, it blew my mind, right? Because we know kapālama, right? We are familiar, just like the masses of us, especially who live here on Oahu, we're familiar with the word, but to have this context, you know, to have this word, and then also to bring it forward just like how you did, right? You brought it not only from its literal to its very practical use for us today, by showing its different iterations over time. It has allowed, hopefully allowed all of you, because this allowed me to be able to, I guess, understand the flexibility or the nimbleness of our words, not to go crazy and totally misuse it, but to see that evolution in the way that we, our perspectives are growing, but still connected back to that source.
It's time for us to do these things. You mentioned lahui and our general mana'o about lahui, but now we've added to that. And it's the same thing with the form, the mana'o of sanctuary. People would say, "Oh, pu'uhonua, it's a pu'uhonua." You have to remember, pu'uhonua was a place people escaped into. But the pālama is more proactive. So we are not being reactive, heading toward the pu'uhonua. We're being proactive in building our pālama.
Awesome, incredible. Auntie Kaʻiu, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think Pueo did a great job on explaining that.
You know, one of the things I think of though, Kumu Kaʻiu, I keep getting that right, is I think about places like Ho'oluʻaina. Right? I think about what you guys have built there with community, right? And how it's become not only a pu'uhonua, but it's become that pālama amongst those of you who work there, and you know the communities of people that you guys engage with, so that they feel because they're fed by that place, right? Many of us, I have kalo sitting on my stove right now that came from that place, feel that sense of what Pueo was talking about.
They feel safe and they feel nurtured and they feel connected, you know. And so I think that what I will say about pālama is that we don't have to have only one pālama. Like I have one in my house, I have one at work, I have one when I, other places. And so, but it's all about really trying to do the best you can in the circumstances that you're in for the people that are in that pālama. And then how do you continue to uplift even more every single time? And so at Ho'olaina, I will say that, we still, people are really sad right now because they're not all able to access it, but just that feeling of going back to the earth, being able to pick your own food, to be able to, walk in nature, to be able to just touch the ground on a daily basis. People are missing that right now.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point. The figurative nature of pālama has changed from that physical stuck point, right? And so as long as we take the values of our pālama with us, ua malama ia, right? We're still ua pālama ia. And so I think that will be, tomorrow's talk is malama ika pālama, how to care. But what we're doing through these talks is we're giving people the tools in which to form their pālama, whether it's the physical wall or the mental wall around them or the spiritual wall around them. This is what this talk is about. And Kumu Kaʻiulani, that was perfectly what you said. Good example. We can still take the values of our pālama with us outside of the actual pā. The pā itself, the wall or the fence structure, was a visual sign, right? That was a visual sign that said, if you're going to cross in here, you probably won't make it back out. If you're coming from the outside and you're going to defile the inner space. And that's a form of pale, and that's a form of protection. And so another foundational term that we have is pale, which means basically to protect. And in hula, we have the walls, figurative and literal, of our halau. That's our pale. We have our practices that also serve as our pale. And so when we define the boundaries, we begin to bolster our own pale abilities, our own abilities to protect ourselves. And so this is the cliff noted version of what we're doing. And in ensuing discussions, it will get deeper and deeper. But the cliff noted version is, think about, what is your pale? What are you doing? We're all following the basic CDC guidelines, the basic health, Department of Health guidelines: wash your hands, social distancing, wear a mask. But we also have cultural things that we're doing so that we can be maka'ala, makawalu, and makaukou. That we can address this through our physical eyes, our physical alertness, through our spiritual alertness, and so that we can be prepared for what is just waiting for us on the outside of our pālama. Like I said, the contemporary practices are pretty forward, right? Wear a mask, wash your hands, and things like that. But what does it look like to approach this pālama, this bubble aspect, from a cultural point of view? And so throughout this weekend, we're going to build upon this. Today we're dealing with the physical aspects of a pālama, the physical aspects. And part of our pule, part of our pale is pule, part of our protection is prayer. And what doesn't make a difference to whom or to what you're praying, but having a very focused prayer schedule or prayer practice, which will be addressed on Sunday, will help you bolster your own inner alignments for physical protection. And what we kind of discussed in our halau is the mana'o of piko. If you have children that go to kula kaya punis or to immersion schools or charter schools, you have a piko time where everybody comes together, gathers together, maybe physically or separately in their own classrooms, to do something unified. And so we can extend that piko. We believe it comes from the old concept of kiko. And if you look in the Hawaiian dictionary, it says it's basically 2 tea leaves that are crossed with a stone on it. That's one example of a kiko. Let's look at the tea leaves. The tea leaf is an old form of pale, right? It's an old form of protection. If I'm going to wrap my pa'iai in this, you have what's kept on the inside clean, and everything on the outside is considered not clean. That's a form of pale. When you cross them together, it forms the shape called pe'a. Pe'a does delineate a kapu space, but pe'a also means boundary, right? Na pe'a o ko'uaina, the boundaries of my land. So I'm now saying, these 2 tea leaves crossed here is my boundary, and this stone, we know that stones can conduct heat. Do we not use them in our imu? We put these in the fire, and they gather this heat, we put the food on top, and then they distribute the heat. So if we use Allah stone, it has connotations for Allah, which means to rise or to be awake or to be conscious. And so we can use a physical kiko like that, or we can just say, this is going to be my little space in my house. This is now my kiko. Or this is the time that I'm choosing to do this. This time now serves as my kiko. Or this is the mindset that I need to be in when I pray. This mindset is now my kiko. You don't have to do a physical kiko as defined in the dictionary. You could have different forms from there, but it's all based on us creating that first boundary, that first pale through pule.
Mahalo, mahalo for that, Pueo. And that's the next. So I hope you guys are all forming your own vocabulary list right now, because that's gonna go. We have two more words, right? And I'm allowing. The reason why I'm kind of breaking this down to its most simplest parts too is because we have people joining in from all kinds of backgrounds, right? From all kinds of access points of where they are in their learning about Hawaiian culture and practices and so forth. So pale and kiko, should be added to that list also on there. Yeah. And so what the vocabulary does also is those are actual tools, right? They themselves, those words, those concepts, those ideas, and then the actual practice of moving those concepts into practice becomes a tool to be able to be used. I see some questions, on here about that, about how, so what is the cultural practices that we can do now that we're isolated, right? Now that we're pulled back from being out there in the larger in landscape, in the larger environment. How is it that we can do that? And I know we're gonna get into that, so I just wanted the other panelists to kind of keep that in mind when they're speaking on here.
When we approach this from a halal point of view, right? So we've been doing this since the past mauli, and we're going to go to the next mauli. And all of the participating halal, we've been using our own hula practices for this. And when you think about hula, we have so many different rules and regulations in our halal that are kind of the same amongst other halal, but they're also different. That shows you it's versatile. What Mehana's going to do in her halal might not be the same, or might have a similar template, but the content might be different, or the interpretation is going to be different. It's all good because any beneficial modification that we can make, anything beneficial that we can make right now in our lives is going to help us to be more proactive against this maʻi, Ikiiki, ʻOwaikū, or this, the COVID-19. So, like in hula, we're just thinking, when we prepare for ceremony, or when you prepare for competition, whatever culminating event you have, right? You have these long terms of ho'omakaukou, of preparation, and they include modifying our diets. They include modifying the things that we ingest, either drink or eat, like I said, the toxins and things like that. How do we manage those things? They also include physical activity. They also, for us to strengthen our bodies, and they also include us being makaukou with the types of pule and the types of chants that we have to go to. So the lehu doesn't need to worry about being able to do the perfect uwehe, but maybe perhaps adding some type of uwehe-ness to your life, right? Or you don't have to worry about eating ceremonial foods to begin your ceremony or to end your ceremony, but be conscious of the foods that you're going to do or to ingest, along with the drinks. And in all of us, Mehana, you mentioned yesterday the respiration of our breath and our perspiration in front of the kuahu. It represents the water cycle, right? We're
the laka in us, yeah.
In us. We emit this moisture, it goes to the top of the kuahu, and it comes down back to us, all the way down to the ʻili, the same way that the water cycle does on the mountains. But for the lay person or a person who's not inducted into our halau, basically, malama your water cycle. Get the water moving, coming into you, moving through you, and out of you. And that has so many benefits that what I just mentioned to you, we're now going to go through in more depth in a way that's kind of more accessible to the public. And this is the cliff noted version. So if you'd like to learn more about the specifics that Kumu Hula do, visit our Lahui Kanaka Facebook, because you'll see videos, you'll see posts in there about things that hula people do and other people who are part of this group to malama their mauliola within their pālama. Um, the discipline that it takes within our pālama um, is meant, just like in halal, to keep us at our peak performance. Okay, and so Kumu Kaʻiu, for those of you who don't know, she's a Kumu hula, but she's also a registered dietitian. And so I'm going to turn it over to her now, just to kind of talk about the things that we've discussed as hua makahikina, this group of Kumu hula, and how they can apply now to the lehu lehu, or to anybody who's not a poʻe hula. Kaʻiu?
Mahalo, Pueo. I just want to say too, before I start, is that there's really a spectrum of what we can do, and that what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we possibly can in the given moment that we're at. And so, for instance, at 9 o'clock, I like to go on to Kanai night together and to do the pule that we're learning from Kale. And sometimes I'm out in nature and fully experiencing the element. Sometimes I'm in my car, sometimes I'm behind my computer at work. And so, but it's the intent of what I'm doing and the space that I put myself when I'm in, that I could be anywhere. And so same with all of these things that we're going to be talking about today. When we're talking about the food system, the spectrum could be that you're getting fish from your uncle next door, all the way to eating canned tuna to fish nuggets. I mean, that's the spectrum. So we want to choose the best of the spectrum when we can, but we realize that with everything going on today, that we're all trying to do the best we can. And then if we're continually trying to move to the part of the spectrum that really feeds our health and to feeds our spirit and to feeds our mental health, then that's the best that we can do. And so we've been talking about a lot of things, and we're trying to set the physical embodiment of what you want to be doing. And what we're knowing in this time of COVID is that our diet and our health is very, very important. Our connection to the land and that whole feedback loop is so important. Our food system, it's really coming to light now in all of this. And overall in the United States, we've given up some resiliency in our food system for efficiency. And so doing the factory farms and because we as consumers want everything to look the same and we want it to be the cheapest possible, you know, that's given way to we're not having the diversity. Really what is surviving right now are the smaller farms that are diverse, growing diverse crops, and that we actually have connections with, and that we're able to buy the foods from the farmers and to get them into our community. And so even as we're thinking about our lifestyle, when has our efficiency given up some of our resiliency? Because that's what we really want to be going for, is we want a resilient lahui. We want to be doing the things that we are going to teach our children and our grandchildren how to have healthy bodies, so that, you know, it's a new day and age, all these things that are starting to come up. You know, and we work with our pregnant class, and we have our young hapai mothers and fathers, and I tell them, I said, you know, you hold all the eggs of not just your children, but they hold the eggs of their grandchildren, and then they hold the eggs of their great-great-grandchildren. And same for the kani, you are the dad, you hold your sperm contains all of the DNA that's going into your child, that goes into your grandchild, and so on and so on. So inside of you, you nurture all of your future generation. So everything you eat on a daily basis, that affects all of your future generation. Everything you say and everything you do, they hear it, they feel it. And so how do we, on a daily basis, choose the things that are going to nurture the best lahui that we have? And so nutrition and food, that's my thing. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that, and what are some of the things that you can do in your pālama. And the first was just about vai that you were talking about, and this water cycle and the what it does in our bodies. And so today, the things that we have to choose to drink from there's so many. And for all of the foods and the things we're talking about, anything that goes into our body, my general rule of thumb is as close as it was put in as the form that it was put onto this earth, that's really what you want to be doing. And so we have water, we have our Hawaiian teas, we have our coconut water. And I really recommend that you go out and find where the coconut trees are around you, because when we're talking about coconut water and how good it is, if we're continuing to buy boxes and cans of coconut water that comes from the Philippines, then we're talking about an efficient but not a resilient food system. And so, and the things that we choose, if you can choose them as close to the area that you're from, these lands understand you, these waters understand you, they'll have the things in you that are going to build up a food system. And so when we're talking about what we're choosing, I don't know, Mehana, can I get my slide?
Sure, sure.
We wanted to just give some real basics on the kinds of foods that we're going to be talking about eating. And so this is something that Solomon Enos had drawn for me, done when I was actually teaching at Kamehameha. And so we're talking about, here's our Pohaku Ku'iai Pono. And so if we're talking about our food system and what kind of foods do we choose on a regular basis, if you look at the very bottom, then you see all of our Polynesian carbohydrates. And these are some of the very best carbohydrates in the world. Our kalo, our ulu, our uala, our green maʻi. And so these foods also are, all of their Hawaiian foods were kinolau forms of our gods, right? So when we ate these foods, we got in all of these qualities we admired. And so that regulated how we planted our foods, how we gathered our foods, how we prepared our foods, the very way that we ate our foods. You know, the poi bowl was on the table, and once that was uncovered, you didn't talk bad or argue or do all of those things. And so we had all of these ways in which we looked at our food system and we gave a respect to it. And so it's really hard to do that nowadays when you're driving through Jack in the Box or you're picking up something quick for the store. That respect that goes to the land, to the food, to the body is very, very different nowadays. The other thing that I know people, there's a lot of talk now about, you know, I have to, I'm cutting out all carbohydrates to be healthy. And I know from many, many years of working with Herbert Ho on our traditional Hawaiian diet programs that you can really eat kalo, ulu, and uala every day in your diet, and you can still lose weight if you want. You can bring down blood sugars, you bring down blood pressures, that these foods are very healthy for us. They tie us to who we are as Kanaka. And the other thing is they support our kalo farmers and they support our farmers that are growing these types of foods. But it's when we have a lot of the very processed carbohydrates in our diet. And I think that's, people, when they cut out our carbohydrate, they feel better. But really what it is that they've cut out a lot of the ones that are very highly processed, that have added fats, that have added sugars inside of it. And so they automatically feel better. So for me, if you want to cut out all processed carbohydrates, that's fine. But I think that what you want to be doing is you want to have the kalo, ulu, uala every single day in your diet, even if it's just a little bit with every meal. The other thing that this does is it provides certain type of substrate, or, you know, we're talking a lot about microbiome and the whole gut-brain connection, and they really are finding that our gut flora has a lot to do with mental health, physical health, certain diseases, all of these things. And so you want to keep a really healthy gut flora. And so all of our Polynesian carbohydrates, there are beginnings for that, and they provide the food for the healthy flora in our body to them. Then you go up to the next level and you see all of this wide range of fruits and vegetables. And so what you want to be doing, and really when we did our traditional Hawaiian diet programs, we were eating maybe 15 to 20 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And you want to have them in all different colors, the purples, the orange, the greens. These are providing all the things in the body. We call them like little warriors in the body that are fighting off all of these different types of diseases. And you want, if you look traditionally at the Hawaiian diet, we also didn't have the large amounts of fruits that we have nowadays. So I always tell people when you're thinking about servings of fruits and vegetables every day, you want to actually have more vegetables than you have fruits in your diet. The other thing that's what's very popular nowadays is juicing or smoothies or those kind of things. And one of the things I just caution for, if it's very heavy on, like, you know, if you've got 5 fruits in it that you can put in a smoothie and drink in 20 minutes, but they wouldn't have been 5 fruits that you could sit down and eat, then I want you to really think about that, because the amount of calories and sugar that goes into your blood system in a very fast manner affects your body different ways than if you were to just naturally eat the fruit. The one good thing about fruit is that it has the natural sugars in it. So if we're trying to cut out processed sugars in our diet, then we would want to be looking at fruits and those kind of things to be eating. Then we go up one more level. And what you're looking on the left-hand side is really calcium products. And so Hawaiians didn't have cows, but all of our bones that have been dug up have been very, very healthy. So we know that within the poi and the luau and maybe the small fish where we are eating their bones, that we got enough calcium in our system to have very, very strong bones. So you want to be eating the green leafy vegetables, you want to be eating the poi, you want the luau, that kind of stuff. If you are choosing dairy products in your diet, then you want to make sure that they're the cleanest products that you can, again, afford, that they don't have the hormones and antibiotics. And the same thing to the right side of that, where you see all of our animal products. You can get your protein from animal protein, or you can get it from plant protein. There's a lot of movement now to decrease the amount of real heavy animal protein in the diet. And so you want to think about where your food comes from. Where did that fish come from? Where, you know, was it wild caught? Was it from our waters? Was it grown in a cage? How was it caught? You know, was that chicken grown in a little cage and given hormones or antibiotics, or was it allowed to free range? And again, you just choose and get whatever you can to the best of your ability. The one thing that you don't want to be doing is to eat a lot of processed meats, you know, and people have heard me say this before, but would you kill a cow or a pig or stick it on a shelf and then go back and eat it 5 years later? And we all say no. But essentially processed meats, that's what they are. That's flesh taken off an animal, and it has to have chemicals in it to make it last, because we're not going to eat it for 2 or 3 years down the line. And so those things are very unhealthy. They also cause inflammation in our body. And so one of the things that we see nowadays, people have heard of the anti-inflammatory diet and all of these things, is that, you know, if you get an injury, so you get a cut or you sprain your ankle, it swells up, the blood all comes to that, it rushes to try and help heal the injury. Well, the same things are going on inside of our diet. When our body recognizes chemicals or foods that are not good for it, it actually has an inflammatory response. And this inflammatory response that stays there chronically over time can lead to cancers, can lead to other diseases. And so you want to bring that down. And if we're eating fresh foods and minimally processed foods, then that causes less inflammatory damage to our bodies. And so when we look at our Hawaiian diet protocol, which was really complex carbs and lots of greens, even our animal products, you know, we had the fish, we had our moa, we did have puao, it wasn't eaten all the time, we ate ilio. And so those kind of things were very, very low in fat. So traditionally, we had a diet that was not high in fat. When we were doing having some of the Hokulea voyaging crew eat only traditional foods from the Marquesas back to Hawaii, we actually had to keep up the fat because of the, when they were eating only traditional foods, it was really low fat. And so we looked to the coconut. That's one of the sources of fat. That's a healthier fat. And so at the very top of the pohaku, you see some of the healthier fats, your avocado, your nuts, your olive oil. Whereas on the right side of that, these are the fats that you want to stay away from. And so, you know, the spam and the mayonnaise and those kind of things like that. And so well, I want to encourage everybody to eat very, very healthy. Again, like I said, we recognize the times that we're in. And so if you can just be choosing, again, along the spectrum to the best of your ability. When you look at this picture too, you'll see all the faces in the mountains. And that's just to represent that we all have grandparents and kupuna and ethnic backgrounds that we come from. And if we are to go back 2 generations, what your grandparents or great grandparents were eating was probably very, very healthy. And if we can look back into the foods that they ate, indigenous people ate on a regular basis, that's also a good way for us to look at what's healthy for our bodies. And you'll see people working in the fields, and this is also to show us too that our foods, it took work to get our foods. Like, we put work into getting what was on our plate, whereas today we take it for granted. And so we just, can drive and get anything else. And a lot of times within our food system, we think because we have the money to buy something, it should just be available for us. And we forget about what really is this season. What are the best foods for us this season? And even within my community, we get, when the ulu comes in, a lot of our community, that's what they want. We can sell 300 pounds of ulu in one day. And so we have to try, those are the kind of things we make available, but it's a lot more work than some of the other foods. And then you'll see people exercising. We want to remind people that to move their body on a daily basis. You see water is a large part of this, making sure that your water intake. And then you see 2 hands that are holding the pohaku. And so that's just to remind us that our food was spiritual. There was a spirituality connected to it. And that's, I think we were one of the few people that really attached the spirituality to the food. Another thing I didn't want to forget was that limu is one of our sea vegetables. And that's also a very, very healthy vegetable for us to include in our diet. And it doesn't just have to be the Hawaiian limus, but you can use the nori and the kombu and other types of those, but not to forget those as a vegetable. Okay, that was my Cliff Notes version of that.
But that's so perfect, because you mentioned inflammation so many times in there. And in the research that I had to do for other projects for our group, I spoke to La'aulapa'au specialist, Auntie Momi Lovell, who's hopefully watching right now, and also 4 medical doctors, Kapono Chong Henson, Kauhi Manu Deng, Nicole Apoliona, and Ashley Ono. And they all pretty much talked about, they also mentioned inflammation. When our body's trying to fight this inflammation and another thing gets introduced to our body, it's just going to mess things up worse. If we have these bradykinin storms taking place within our bodies and we have inflammation complicating those things, it's going to mess up even more. And so what this type of diet that you're talking about does is us being proactive, allows us a means to be proactive, so that should we happen to be affected by this maʻi Ikiiki ʻOwaikū, our body is more primed to fight off its influences. So I really appreciate that. And you also mentioned basically eating local. And from a la'aulapa'au point of view, from what my teachers have told me, if a food is grown around us, it's exposed to the same types of environmental dangers that we are, whether it's UV or whether it's pollution. These plants in our community, they develop the defenses against those same things that we're not necessarily the best at defending ourselves against. So when we ingest these things from our own community, we also inherit their properties that allow them to exist and to thrive. So eating locally, I can eat a strawberry grown here in Kula and get the benefits plus the flavor, as opposed to eating a strawberry grown in Chile where it just tastes good. And so you have not only supporting local farmers, but you also have the local microbes, you have the local macronutrients that are available to us that help us at this very time. And that's why seasonally too, it's also important. I really appreciate that. When
Well, and we talked about the other day how just our connection to the earth and to actually growing our own food. So if we can get all of our kids to learn how to grow food, excuse me, to plant the mala, then that's one part of our food system that we're investing in. Another thing is, we work in buildings, we live in houses, we drive in cars. A lot of us don't touch the earth. on a daily basis. So one of my practices is to make sure that I've got my feet planted in the earth or the sand or something every single day.
Polole. And so not included in our cliff noted version are the effects of grounding and or the effects of the types of microbiome or biota that we expose ourselves to that will help us have better access to the nutrients and all of the benefits. So that's not included in the cliff noted version that we're presenting today. But if you'd like to know more about those types of things from a cultural perspective and a dietitian's perspective, let us know, and maybe we can get a talk ready for you. You know, you mentioned in there too the physical practices, right? Like you had a surfer on one side, and you mentioned physical activity, and so some, just as a hula practitioner, my own halau, because we're in our pālama, their assignment is to dance at least 3 different hula every day, just to get their blood moving. And so there's other things like another Kumu hula of ours. She's going to be talking on Sunday. Kumu hokulani hot. She does chair Pilates, right? Just to do things. And another Kumu hula talking tomorrow, Kumu Tatiana. She said that now she's standing and typing at the same time. So it doesn't really make a difference whether you can dance a hula, or whether you do chair Pilates, or whether you just change from a sitting position while working on the computer to a standing position. Any small modification that's beneficial will help us to prime our bodies to be at its peak should we happen to encounter this maʻi. But for people who might not be so mobile, and I'm thinking about our kupuna, or people who might be immobilized because of injuries or whatever, that's where lomi can come in inside of our pālama. It doesn't have to be actual traditional Hawaiian lomi, although we do suggest that, but it could be even just massaging the feet or things like that. And Kumu Kaʻiu, you had mentioned in one of the notes about what distinguishes lomi from regular massage. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, we just had another talk on this the other day, but you know, from just sometimes you'll see the same moves and you'll say, well, why is that lomi? But really, during the practice or the study to be a lomi practitioner, it's a spirituality and the connection to really cultural thoughts and the way that we approach the body, the pule that we use during the practice, but really our connection to spirituality is really what makes it different from just a massage practice.
All right. And so although we're talking about this, we've kind of made these talks the same way that we would construct our kuahu. We've talked about how we in our hula we align our 3 piko, and it can also align with physical, mental, and spiritual. When we are talking right now simply about the physical, which was our assignment, we also want to remember that this is the cliff noted version for what we can do physically, but we are not excluding the mentality that we need to have, as well as the spirituality that we should also be including within our pālama. So you will definitely hear more about those things tomorrow and on Sunday. You know, with lomi and exercise, right? Part of that, in hula right now, we have, in our hula prayers, sleep is mentioned kind of a lot. And even one of the names for couple, there's other interpretations of this name, but moi haunaiki, couple moi haunaiki, we were told through our master that she's the type of couple that can make you fall asleep quickly after hula. That's the exhaustion, but she will also begin instructing you in your sleep. And then at the end of our hula ceremonies, there's a pule that says, Noa ya'u ya kaʻaula. And she is the kaʻaula is the akua wahine over sensual dreams. And so when I'm sleeping in ceremony, and when I'm now out of ceremony, I'm free to have sensual types of dreams, meaning not focused simply on hula. But for us as hula practitioners, sleep is so important. We can learn a chant the next day, or go to sleep that night. The next day, it kind of comes out pretty easy because that's what happens in sleep. It's regenerative. So you and I had talked about we need to also be sure that we have regenerative types of sleep in our pālama, those types of habits that allow us to have sleep. And our peer Pele Kaʻio mentioned the other day about consumption. We just talked about physical consumption of foods, but consumption of things that are on screens will also affect, the blue light will affect our sleep systems as well. And so developing habits that will allow us to have better and regenerative restorative sleep is also a part of our hula practices, but also now a part of our pālama. We're really focusing on these types of things more consciously. So I'm very thankful for that, because I've recently been getting a lot of good sleep because of this, reducing my internet and reducing my sugar consumption. I can't tell you how clear my thoughts have been, and my skin's getting better. I lost 4 pounds. I didn't even know I was going to lose 4 pounds. So yeah, there's a few things, few benefits in there, fringe benefits. Other things
And really from,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from a circadian rhythm point of view, that if you can be in bed by 10 o'clock, then that's the best way to start regulating your body. And so a lot of us are used to staying up late and working late, and it really takes a little bit of effort to try and to get into bed, to be relaxing, to not be lying in bed and to be picking up your phone and to be reading it until you go into sleep. And that's something I also used to do too, is like wake up in the morning and the first thing I was doing was like checking my messages and things like that, and to really put those things down. You don't need to be on them, 24/7. Our kids don't need to be on them all of the time. And see what that does to just your body and your rhythms by not having those things with you right before you're going to sleep or right when you're waking up in the morning.
Right, polole. You know, the being conscious about what we're doing is also part of forming that pale around us. It's part of us reconnecting with ourselves. And we talked earlier, I talked earlier about the plant communities that when healthy reflect a form of uli, the sea communities when healthy reflect a form of uli. And I see in the comments people are talking about food and its importance, which is pololei. And we have that mana'o, that food is medicine. And in our halau, we know that we take food very consciously, but we also, as Kumu hula, we also have knowledge of how to heal our hula-based injuries. And so we also prescribe to our, not all of us, but some of us do prescribe to our students, okay, you have an eha here, let's do this. You have an eha here, let's do this. And so another aspect, I think the last aspect that we want to talk about today, just regarding the physicality of the pālama, is establishing a relationship, once again, not just with our food, but also with la'au lapa'au practices or traditional healing practices. We mentioned a little bit about lomi, but also about the types of plants and animals that can be used for la'au lapa'au. We are not here to diagnose or to prescribe anything. What we are here to do is encourage you to have talks within your family about what were the medicinal practices that you heard about, that your mom or your parents or your grandparents or great-grandparents passed down to you? Perhaps what are some of the remedies that you know, or some of the fortifying things that you know? Have those kind of conversations. Or perhaps you'll see on the Lahui Kanaka website, or in mention somewhere if you scroll through the comments, oh, so-and-so is a practitioner for la'au lapa'au, or so-and-so is a practitioner for lomi lomi, and striking up those relationships in the community. And right now, although we're in our pālama, we can begin the talk. It doesn't have to be face-to-face. We can begin to strike up these relationships again, and maybe get some advice on what we can do for specific things that can keep our body at peak performance throughout this time of Lahui Kanaka. So la'au lapa'au, again, we're not here to diagnose you or to prescribe anything for you, but there are certain things that are kind of safe when taken in moderation. And if you have a hard time with water, just drinking water, Kumu mentioned Hawaiian teas. You have ko'oko'olau, you have mamaki, you have introduced things like wapine, or introduced kind of laua'e, or even the introduced plant called kinehe. Those are all forms of teas that are pretty mild enough to allow your body to enjoy a taste, but also to serve as detoxification. And a lot of those are also good to kind of reduce inflammation and reduce blood pressure as well. So perhaps you will be out of your pālama to do your short shopping trip, and you might say, oh, I see mamaki tea here. Or you can put out a call and somebody who's growing mamaki can leave a little package on your doorstep and you have mamaki for yourself. Little things like that. You're creating a relationship with the people in your community, but you're also bolstering your body.
Actually, ginger and olena tea is a really good tea for people to be drinking right now. The ginger is pretty much available. Olena, you know, for us this season is pau up at Ho'oluaina, and so we're letting our plants regenerate. But when we have a lot, I usually take it and cut it up and dry it so that I have our own ginger. So those are two also really good teas that you can be drinking right now.
All right. And you mentioned also, this is a backtrack too, about healthy oils and things like that. And kukui nut is another a source of good fats. And here, right now, I have a bucket because our tree, it's always dropping the kukui right now. So my bucket is filling up. And so when the season begins to kind of wind down, that's when we make our inamona and our oil again. So just keep an eye out. If that's around your pālama, access those things. You're doing more than you know and just picking up the physical things. You're also populating yourself with microbes that help you break those things down.
And learning to make inamona for your family and having that on a table on a regular basis is actually a really good idea.
Mahalo.
I think that's a workshop, an upcoming workshop. I still don't know how to make inamona. So I wanna learn how to do that too, and how much actual kukui nuts it takes to make, you know, a nice.
It depends
nice
on how many you burn.
How much you burn? Is
Yeah.
that what you said? Yeah. Yeah. That's the part I'm afraid of, because I know I'm going to overcook them. Yeah. Oh, and Malia also put in a chat that on Le Anui Nui they did, which is another show for all of you guys who don't know yet. Go on to Kaʻiulani, their website and their Facebook page. They feature a show every, I think it's Tuesday. I'm gonna get it wrong. It's almost every day of the week. Yeah. And they have shows at 9 and I think it's 9 and 2. Watch, I got this all wrong. I know Malia's gonna clock me on this, but go to Kaʻiulani. But they did a show on inamona making. Yeah, so that's awesome.
It's a really good skill to have, and if you learn it right now during this Lahui Kanaka time, it's a skill that can take you through the rest of your life. Along with all of the things that we've just outlined and that will be outlined through the next few days, these are skills right now to keep us at peak performance within our pālama, but they're actually, if you do this Lahui Kanaka, that's enough time for you to incorporate this, not just as a proactive measure, but as a measure that you incorporate into your everyday life from now until the rest of your life. And like Kumu Kaʻiu said, you are also doing this for the life that you host in your body in the form of eggs or the keakea. So these are skills that will help us right now, but they'll also extend throughout the rest of our lives.
And then I know we had talked about the pulo'ulo'u, and I just wanted to bring up that one practice. And, you know, when we first learned it from Auntie Alapa'i, we used maile hohono, and it was to expel the things in our chest and our lungs. But one of the practices that you could do nowadays, and a lot of people are using essential oils now, and this is actually something my naturopath told me, is that if you're out and about or may have you know, been outside of your pālama and amongst people, is that to come home and to do the same type of pulo'ulo'u. And I have these little bottles I give away, but they've got rosemary, thyme, oregano, and frankincense. And these are antimicrobial. They help the lungs. And so what she told me, because she knew I was working in a health clinic, is that to, you know, get the water boiling, just add a drop or two of this in, get the towel, put it over your head, and inhale all of this. So in case you may have come across some germs or they got into your system, I don't know if you've seen what the coronavirus looks like, but it has to actually like get down and get into your system. And so what she told me was that this heat and some of the antimicrobial, is that the word? Anyway, those are some of the properties of these oils. And so if you come home after being out and you just do this pulo'ulo'u with just these things, you can also maybe try and prevent it from sinking into your lungs with the heat and just the property effects of that. So that's something that is pretty easy for people to do. It's kind of based on one of our traditional practices, but something that uses more modern day materials.
Yeah, and so the term for that is pulo'ulo'u, like you mentioned, or puholoholo, which means basically to steam yourself. For people who aren't knowledgeable about what this is, it's a way to steam yourself and be able to get the benefits of what it does to your pores. The medicines can sink into your pores. You can also breathe these things in, which I think is a perfect segue to the end of our physical practices that we've talked about, which is bathing. So we talked again about how we're doing our prayers and how we're ingesting water. The word wai, we're all familiar with wai, means water, or does it? Wai also means to store things. It has the ability to store. Look it up in the dictionary. There's an aspect of storing there, pu'u waina, right? Waihona or waiho. And so we can use water to store things for us. So one of the practices related to pulo'ulo'u is bathing, and you can crush wapine, you can crush herbs and put it in your bathing water. And if you're feeling extra imbalanced, like we do in hula, we put Hawaiian salt in our bathing water mixed with Epsom salts. And that's also something you can do for yourself to increase your magnesium or other minerals that you need. And sometimes you're like, oh, I'm not going to spend that much money on Epsom salts. So you can go to the ocean, one person right now, right on Oahu, go to the ocean, get your bucket of seawater and take it back into your bathtub, put it in there, add your extra hot water in there, and then soak in that. And that allows you to absorb the minerals of the ocean, which are the same that we need in our body. We can absorb that. And also through osmosis, we expel toxins that will then holoaku. So we can use water not only to internally, we can use it also externally to help us regenerate and to rebalance those types of practices. And as Kumu said, you can add other things to there, like makahala. It's an introduced thing for sore joints. You can add the palepiva, which is eucalyptus, for increased lung health. You can add rosemary, like she said, or essential oils, and combine them with pule, of course. And so the end of you'll see on Sunday, closing prayers in the evening time that I do while bathing because of the aspects of water. I also use that time to release things from the day that might have been frustrating or defiling to me physically, mentally, or spiritually. Mehana.
Wow. All I gotta say is wow. And mahalo to everybody in the chat rooms on both sides, both here on Zoom and also throughout social media, because many questions are being asked and many questions are being answered by our audience, you know, and so that's so incredible. You know, mahalo to all of you guys there. And we've also been posting questions related to what the speakers have been talking about today. You know, one of the questions that came through, and I wanted to just jump to answer a few of the questions that are in here, was, is a traditional Hawaiian diet, would we consider that to be vegetarian?
No, we weren't vegetarians as Kanaka. We had, like I was saying, you know, we relied a lot on i'a and the things from the sea. We also had chicken or moa, and like I said, we ate ilio. And early on, I think it was Claire Hughes, and she was talking about in Bishop Museum, the amount of, when you were looking at the hula, what is the word I'm looking for? That they made with the niho of the ilio, that they only made it with the IT. And so in order to have that many, was indicative of that our society had a lot of ilio inside of it. And so that was also a lower fat. But we weren't vegetarians. And we had pua'a more for ceremonial. It wasn't an everyday type of thing, but we ate animal proteins a lot. But the thing to remember is that our animal proteins were a lot cleaner. They were wild. They lived in a clean ocean. They, you know, fed off of a clean earth. They weren't in cages. They weren't getting antibiotics and hormones. And so this was a very clean source of protein that we had.
And then
That's
we also
awesome.
forget about the things we cannot eat now, like the seabirds and migrational birds too, that we are able to access nutrients from. So
Or things like eels, you know, we ate eel, but nobody really thinks about, you know, eating that kind of stuff today. And then it is the processing. And so we had this other conversation, Pueo and I, about really, you know, our families that still eat spam. What are we going to do about that? And so, I mean, not what are we going to do about it, but, you know, what is the message that we want to do? Because that, you know, and so as a young dietitian, I used to just say, don't eat this. It's bad for you. It's got chemicals. It's got nitrites. They cause cancer, blah, blah, blah. And so that didn't go over well. And so, then I started to say, well, if you're going to eat these types of foods, then don't do it on a regular basis. And while you're eating them, what if you make, you know, spam and cabbage and have orange slices or carrots or these protective things in your body that go into your body at the same time as this. And now we actually have our own recipe for spam that I'm happy to share with everybody. But I use local pork when I can, but it's just ground pork and some paʻakai and garlic cloves and a little bit of, I started to use potato starch because that was in the original recipe, but now I use cassava flour from cassava, that flour that, you know, we make ourselves. So we make a spam that's really pretty much 90% local ingredients. And that's along my spectrum, right? It's just, you're gonna eat some type of fried spam. And the thing is that unhealthy things stay within the fat layers in your system. And so when you have something that's unhealthy and then you're frying it in fat, that, you know, it doesn't help it to clear out of the body. But if you can, and you're not eating all the time, and you can eat it with healthy foods that are going to be protective in your body, like vitamin A and vitamin C and those kind of things, better yet. And then if you can make it yourself with ingredients, this is, you know, again, how we move along the spectrum. And that was one of the other things I guess I wanted to mention, is that I truly believe you can get everything your body needs from the food that we have. But it is special times. And so even right now, I am supplementing with vitamin C and vitamin D, because I think these are protective vitamins and I want to make sure I have enough. The thing to remember though, when supplementing, is that vitamin C is a water soluble vitamin. So it'll move through your body. So you can take a lot larger amount. Vitamin A and vitamin D, you cannot just take unlimited amounts, because those are fat soluble vitamins and they'll stick, and that there is a possibility that you could have too much of those. So even as you're trying to, you know, help your diet a little bit with these kind of things, you definitely want to make sure that you know what you're doing with that.
slowly, you know, you mentioned a recipe that you put together and used, and I think that could be a good segue into what has this lahui kanaka looked like for us, right? What are the things that we've been able to do? Because it sounds like such a daunting, perhaps, or intimidating thing, but it is. I'm not gonna lie, there are some challenges because you go deep into thought, and you go deep into spirituality and deep into physical challenges, but it's actually not that difficult when you get ma'a to it. And so, like for me, my entire halal, reduce sugar. I didn't say cut out sugar, just reduce sugar. Increase things that we have delineated as being boosting to our bodies. This includes traditional foods and some foreign foods. Increase the amount of sun exposure that we have a day into to beneficial amounts. And that also corresponds with what you'll see on Sunday, which is when they talk about how we pray at noontime. That UV, of course, is antimicrobial. It kills microbes. It also helps us to access the vitamin D that we intake. So we pule 3 times a day. We have set times to pule. We have 3 types of pule that we do, set pule. And other than that, we've just been doing things that anything we can ingest to reduce inflammation, and anything that we can ingest to boost ourselves, our health. And that's basically what we do. So it's not as daunting as it takes. And I know Kaʻiu will share also, maybe Mehana as well, but other people too, please share, like you're just hearing this concept maybe for the first time. What are some of your mana'o that you might think could fit into this pālama, the aspect of lahui kanaka within your pālama? Kaʻiu, what are some things that you do?
And so I'm so happy that even though I have to be alone on the beach, that I try and make sure and walk the beach and get in the ocean almost 3 to 4 times a week. And I hadn't gone for a couple of weeks because of our order, and I went back today, and that automatically makes me feel better. I also try and choose as much food as I can, and I'm lucky. I work for a place that has this food hub, and so I know that's something that we talked about. Is what are the resources out there? You know, we're saying to eat all of these foods, but where do you all get them from? And we were hoping that maybe Mehana or Oha could help. You know, if the community knows some place that is selling kalo and ulu and local organic fruits and vegetables, where are they? You know, for us in Kalihi, we're open Tuesday and Thursday. We buy from 17 small organic farms. We have kalo, ulu, uala, at least, you know, 1 or 2 of those every single week for sale. And then we have all kind of fresh fruits and vegetables. And so that's something, you know, I also try and make sure that I am eating one of my kupuna foods for every single meal. That's just something I'm trying to do. And so whether it be, you know, a slice of sweet potato or kalo in a stew or something, how do I get those into my foods? Or limu in a salad? How do I make sure that I'm eating those foods every day? I feel like just, it's not only the health benefits, and the microbes, you know, that I'm eating the same type of things that made a healthy gut for my kupuna on a daily basis, but that we're supporting the aina, we're supporting our farmers, we're supporting a food system. And that's what I really would like to see. You know, when we're bringing in over 80 to 90% of the food that we buy, like we really need to think about it. And we really need to, there's a lot of interest in the food system because of what's going on. And you know, there's all these great conversations, but what I see is people are trying to grow more food. They're trying to cook their own food. They're being more connected to knowing where their food comes from. And so that's a big part of what I do on a daily basis. I also am, you know, doing the teas and making sure I'm getting my sleep to, you know, do the poulet. At least I try to make 3 times a day, but I don't always. So I'm still trying to get there, but at least 1 time a day. And also connecting with my family on a regular basis, because they're not all in my pālama. Some of them are outside, and so we don't get to see each other as often as we can, but to make sure that and not just close family members, but people that I consider that are part of, you know, my circle that keeps me laughing and happy and healthy, that I'm making sure that I'm connecting with them and still maintaining that conversation with them even though I'm not like physically seeing them on a daily basis.
Now, Kaʻiulani, just had a quick question. What are the times at KKV at Kokua Kalihi Valley that you guys operate on Tuesday and Thursday?
I know definitely it's 11:30 to 1:30, but sometimes they'll open at 10:30 on a Thursday morning. But if you follow our Instagram page, Roots Kalihi, every Monday and Wednesday, they will post what is available on the Tuesday and Thursday, so you can see.
Roots Kalihi, yeah, is the
Roots
IG.
Kalihi, yeah, is the Instagram page.
And we have another question about what are the pule times recommended for the Lahui Kanaka. I know we'll cover this on Sunday too, but for those of you guys who are asking that, yeah, we know that we want to come together with everyone at noon at Kokalai Kalolo, but many of us are also doing morning pule and evening pule together also. Yeah, but if we can gather together at 12 noon, always we'll know that we'll be in concert with many hundreds and hundreds of other people who are doing it at that same time.
Yeah, I actually have my alarm set to go off at 10 to 9, 10 to 12, and then in the evening. But just so that, because I get so busy, you know, at work, and that I have to make that conscious effort to stop. So I have something that tells me, okay, it's time.
This is amazing, and the reason why the two presenters keep saying, you know, this is just the abridged version or the Cliff Notes version of this too, and it's causing everybody in the chat rooms to beg for more. It is. It was like, no, don't stop. You know, keep telling us. You know, I have tried to volunteer. I don't know if it's actually worked yet because we haven't put it together yet. But I've tried to volunteer other kumu to over the next on a hulu, the next two on a hulu, if they would share a workshop with everyone, then that way we can go more into, you know, into the, again, the depth and breadth of you know, each of these topic areas. Right? They presented you a plethora of topics and content that you can use. But I know many of you are just like, okay, what about this? And what about this? You know, they want more specific knowledge about it. And so look to oha.org/lahui kanaka. We'll post whatever workshops that are created on there, and also our Facebook site at Lahui Kanaka Kapu Mauliola. You can also find it on there. Yeah. Anything else that you guys like to share? You know, before we do our final like ending slides, I just want to ask the presenters, you know, if we've kind of covered everything that you guys wanted to speak about today, or if there was anything else.
This maʻi, Ikiiki, ʻOwaikū is 100% transmitted between humans, period. So we've asked, as you mentioned before, our own halau to go through 3 anahulu, which is 30 days. So that definitely covers 2 incubation periods. And so for the lehu, for the public, hula people, I can just tell my students and they have to do it. But we can't tell the public to do that. We can ask you to consider instituting this lahui kanaka and building your pālama. Consider doing it for 3 anahulu, or at least for 2 consecutive anahulu. It doesn't matter if it's the first 2 anahulu of the malama of the month or the last 2 anahulu of the malama. And that is about 20 days, which is about 1.5 incubation periods, which, you know, it will be effective. Even what you do a little bit will affect us positively in the long run. So it's also temporary. We're not going to be living in this lahui kanaka forever and ever. So don't look at it as being so intimidating. Maybe Mehana, you can explain about the anahulu and what dates the next set is going to start.
Yep. I just wanted to also say is that, you know, you're going to hear a lot over the next 3 days, and it might seem overwhelming, like I can't possibly do all of this, but what we're really hoping is that whatever you choose, 1 anahulu, 2 anahulu, or even longer, is that you emerge a little bit healthier than what you went into this with, because you've learned something new, or you've tried something new, or you've passed on something new. And that if we keep going at this rate, and you know, I know it's not going to last forever, but we are hoping that the health habits that you pick up are going to last a long, long time. And that this is a great time for us to really think about the lahui as a whole. What do we want for our children and our grandchildren, and for the next, you know, generations upon generations, that we are healthy, that we are strong, and that we are on our aina and taking care of it, and it's taking care of us? What are the things that we need to do to make that happen? And so we start small, but one day at a time, we get stronger and we get healthier.
Mahalo, mahalo nui for that. You know, let me just share my screen for a minute here. Okay, wait, maybe not. Let me open this up. Okay. Oh, sorry, my screen is having trouble sharing it while we're, you know, while I'm trying to get this on the screen. Oh, I know why. Because I made it so that only I can see it. Let me just take the screens out. Let me just talk through this for a little bit. You know, one of the things that is so important for us, you know, going forward, like Pueo was saying, is to help everyone, find an access, access point. And Kaʻiu also stressed this, right? Like, we want you guys to be able to do what you can when you can, and so that it is not so overwhelming that you just say, no, I can't do it. Right. So what we're gonna propose to everyone, or what we're sharing with everyone, is to go from maoli. Again, we're gonna do the maoli moons. We're gonna work on that. I mean, just there's the word is there. It's there for us to use, right? And all of that mana that's put into that word and that moon cycle, and then that intention, we're gonna malama that. We're gonna embrace that as something that we use. So we're gonna go from maoli to maoli, and it just so happens that maoli to maoli will occur from September 14th to Wednesday, October 14th, right? So from September 14th to October 14th. What we're asking everyone to do is to choose at least 2 anahulu, 2 contiguous anahulu, 2 connected anahulu, right? So not like 1 week and then 1 week off, and then, or 1 anahulu, then break, and then 1 anahulu, but choose 2 connected anahulu, so 20 consecutive days, right? To commit to this, right? To commit to something, to changing your behaviors a little bit, to implore from the abundance of information that you have been presented with today, and will be tomorrow, and also on Sunday. Yeah, to try and strive towards Maliola. Yeah, and one thing Auntie Kayo didn't mention was, I know one of the first things I learned when doing Ipono with Uncle Herbert was the whole 21 days to make a habit, right? That will, if you change your behaviors, especially your eating behaviors for, that length of time, that it will become natural to you to be able to do those things much easier. Yeah. So we're going to ask you to do 20 consecutive days, 2 anahulu, yeah, which covers 1 incubation period, which out there, the medical advice is 14 days, right? So this will cover that and surpass that. Yeah. So we're asking, all of you to go ahead and help us, and help each other, right? Help us as a community, as a lahui of people that are in tune with each other, on this, and that we'll go through together with this. Yeah. So much stuff. I'm still reeling from a lot of the information, even though we've been having these conversations. Some of the things you guys presented today, I'm still thinking through, right? I'm still processing and ready to absorb again, for the second time, and see things in a slightly different way. So this, everyone, was just our first day of workshops. Yeah, this is just the first one presented by Hua Makahikina, for the Lahui Kanaka, with the intention of Mauliola. And I like what Pueo had shared with us earlier, that this is a proactive, right? I always call Lahui Kanaka a cultural response, but he was very clear, and I agree with this, that this is a proactive measure on how it is that we strengthen our bodies to be able to deal with what's in front of us. And at this point, it's COVID-19. Right? And he didn't get to explain it now. That'll be a whole workshop later. But what he's termed as the name of the maʻi. And yeah, Pueo, will you do a workshop on that at another time?
Yes, and you can Venmo me at. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and see, this is my nice way of, I don't volunteer, I ask. I just simply ask questions.
You all saw her do that. You all saw.
And what I'm going to throw up on the screen right now, because this one is able to share, is the workshop for tomorrow. Yeah, so the workshop for tomorrow will feature Na Kumu hula, Ali'i Haini Hirohara, Pi'ilani Ka'avaloa, Tatiana Seu Fox, along with our beautiful and amazing guests, Dr. Kealoha Fox and Dr. Alkahi Austin Seabury. And then their panel tomorrow is entitled Mālama Ika Pālama, yeah, caring for your pālama. So we want you guys all to come back, same time, same place, here on Zoom, and it's going to be, you know, you're going to gain access the same way. Yeah, and I'd just like to thank our guests for today, Nā Kumu hula, Pueo Pata, and Kaʻiulani Odom, you know, with just an intense amount of information today. And this is just a hint of what to expect this whole weekend from all of that. So from all of us, from Huma Kahikina, to all of you out there, mahalo, mahalo, mahalo. Yeah, and thank you, Malia, for putting that back up again. Thank you to all of you for joining us. E kalahuie. Until tomorrow. Yeah, mālama pono, mālama, iko pālama, and ahui ho.